Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. I'm your host, John Glasspool, and tonight I am speaking with Mr. Don Johnson, who had an NDE back in 2020. Don, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, paint us a picture. What happened back then in 2020?
So we moved off a ranch and we moved into town. And the house that I live in is 2 blocks from the hospital where I had my near-death experience. And we had a choice between two different houses. And my wife kept telling me, no, there's something about this house. We got to have this house. And it wasn't my first choice, but happy wife, happy life. I said, okay. So we ended up getting the house. Then when we were moving in, I tell my son, yeah, that's the hospital right over there. If I have a heart attack and die, I can just go right there and take myself. And that's 100% what happened. So 2 years later, I was training for the Portland Marathon and I was running, best shape of my life, and had a heart attack. Should have killed me in the first 6 minutes. And I passed away in the emergency room for a minute and a half. And yeah, I think like I mentioned to you, it's still kind of hard to talk about, because it's beyond words. It is like nothing that I could explain. I can see it in my mind's eye right now, but to try to explain it or draw it or whatever, it's difficult. And this event should have been pretty catastrophic in a short period of time, but somehow my life was spared long enough for me to get to the hospital. And when I got there, of course, the place is full. This is right at the beginning of COVID. This is February 11th of 2020. So the place is full, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to stay here. There's a lot of people here. Well, long story short, by the grace of God, somebody grabbed me in the waiting room as I was trying to leave and said, "Hey, you don't look okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's something wrong. I'm not sure." And they go, "Well, sit down here for a second and let us check it out." Within seconds, they had me in the emergency room and they were cutting my running clothes off. And I was like, "What's going on?" They're going, "Sir, you're having a heart attack." And at that point, I remember going into the emergency room, kinda. I remember them cutting off my running clothes because I just got them and they were, yeah, some of my favorites. But, and then, I didn't have like the hovering over my own body experience, but I did experience, the cliche, the light, so much warmth and, just love and a feeling like I've never felt before, and I couldn't explain it if I had to. But what really makes my situation unique is, so my mother passed away 3 years on that same day, 3 years prior, from brain cancer. And I saw my mom as plain as day, as young and beautiful and full of life, and had told me that it wasn't my time. And I'm told that, my cardiac arrest lasted a minute and a half. I do kind of remember the paddles, just how that felt, but it's that the time on the other side was like timeless. It was like, it seemed like an eternity, but it didn't seem like an eternity. And it was just, yeah, it's hard to explain. But the last thing I remember was literally the next day waking up in the ICU and just literally being in awe for probably 5 minutes that one, I was still alive, and two, I couldn't even comprehend what had just happened to me. And it took me, I don't know, probably a good 2 weeks to fully even, I guess, come down from the experience. Not only was, I was still in pretty bad shape, but just the whole mental aspect of that was, super emotional. It was emotional.
Wow. And so you were absolutely sure that what you had experienced was real, though?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, I've told this story to close friends and, some family members, and, not everybody believes that, and I don't really need anybody to believe it, but I know it's true, and I saw it and I felt it and I experienced it. And I don't, just because you can't always explain it with some kind of science doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I've read a lot about it, and pretty much immersed myself in it after that day, but it was a life-changing event for me.
Hmm. Had you had any discussions with doctors or nurses about the incident? Did they
I
ever
could
ask
barely
you
even talk
anything?
about it, and so what made this situation even worse, so that was February 11th of 2020. They kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks and then let me go. And then, this is in the beginning of COVID. So evidently I had tested positive for COVID in the hospital, but we didn't know what that was. And so they let me go and then immediately called me back, and I spent more time in the hospital. So it was almost like they went from my heart attack event straight to COVID. And I was on quarantine and all that in the hospital, but that was so early on, they really didn't know what to do. So I didn't really get even to talk to a doctor about my own medical condition for almost a year. And at that point I wasn't really comfortable in saying too much about it anyway, because the people that I did mention it to, they thought I was losing my mind. I had people, say that I wasn't telling the truth, or that I made it up, or that it was some side effect of some drug or something. But I know what I saw and I know what I felt. And, like some of those people, if it's not explained by science, then, it doesn't exist. And it doesn't matter if they're religious or faithful or whatever or not, that, some people just flat out don't believe that.
Yeah.
And some, believe more than that. So I think we're all the same. I just think it's a matter of, I tell people like this. There was a period of time when people didn't think it was humanly possible to run a 4-minute mile. Now, millions of people run a 4-minute mile, but at one point in time, it was not humanly possible because somebody said it wasn't possible. That's kind of where we're at in our consciousness right now. I think we're at an area where just because you might not have experienced, or someone might not have experienced it yet, doesn't mean it's not possible. I mean, even I find it hard to explain, and I experienced it.
Yeah, that's
But it's one of those things where you just know, once you know, and that's, something that can't be explained, I guess. I don't know.
that's an awakening, and that I understand that, like, and for you, that's where the conversation ends, and it's hard to go beyond that with so many people. It's like when you feel it, or when you know it, you want deep down inside everyone to know it, obviously, but it's
Well, and another thing for me, I'd never really had a great relationship with my mother for various reasons. And, I did get to say goodbye to her when she passed away from brain cancer, but, we weren't super close. And the fact that, I had an interaction with her on the other side, to me, it could have been anyone, right? It could have been anyone. And the coincidence of the timing and just how that all happened is, and yeah, I have some regrets about that, because I wish I would have had a better relationship with my mom. But at the same time, seeing her like that was the best thing. Well, I'm no longer scared to die, for sure. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's more love than I've felt ever. And I have kids and have a great relationship and have lots of love and great friendships around me. But that is different. It is like just beyond words different. And I hate to sound, I keep saying the same thing over and over, but it is different.
When you saw your mom, like what sort of space were you in? Like, what was your surroundings? What else did you see? And when that happened?
Nothing really, just a lot of bright light and colors. And, my mom was, younger and, had a aura kind of around her. But when I say bright light, I mean, I'm talking bright light, brighter than you could even imagine. Anything brighter than anything you've ever seen on Earth, but not that it would blind you. You could look at it and it was not blinding, but it was brighter than I could ever, anything I've ever seen on Earth. I mean, look straight into the sun, it's brighter than that, but it wasn't blinding. I don't know. That's the best way to explain it.
Mm-hmm. It's like a calming brightness.
Like
doesn't hurt your eyes. It's not
the
hard.
biggest warming blanket that you could ever think of, wrapped around your entire body. Just yeah.
And so, when you first made contact with her, was that all she said to you, or was there some sort of greeting first?
No greeting,
No,
just said, go home. It's not your time. And we didn't touch or anything, but we were in each other's presence for what seemed like an eternity, but I couldn't even tell you what the time was like. It seemed like forever, but not. And I in my medical report, it says that I was basically clinically dead for about a minute and a half. But I mean, I don't know, it seemed like hours to me.
I've heard some people report back like it seems like it could have been months or even years.
Yeah. And I didn't see any life flashing before my eyes, or any, not even my kids or anything. I literally saw my mom only, and the super bright white light, and kind of like a marble color around my mom's aura. But that's really all I saw.
So when you saw the light initially, there was no form of communication or messages being conveyed to you or anything, right?
No.
But it must have been fascinating.
It was very fascinating.
Yeah.
I can see it in my mind's eye, and they were, I was on a gurney and they were wheeling me out when I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're going, sir, you're having a heart attack. And I just remember the last thing I said was, oh, damn, I don't want to die today. And the next thing I know, I'm, in the ICU in recovery the next day. But, I'm off in heaven or wherever you want to call it, where it seemed like that whole time.
Who's the first person you spoke to about it?
My wife, the next day, because of course I was super thankful that I woke up and I was still alive. But
was it one of the first things that you said, or did you guys sort of have a
no, I mean,
first?
I was just kind of in a bewilderment, and when it was a Widowmaker heart attack, so it should have killed me. It should have killed me instantly. And for some reason it didn't. My doctor says it's because I was running and training, that I probably was the only thing that's made me survive that. And so, not only was I thankful to tears that I was still there, but I was also super emotional about what I'd seen, and I didn't know what to say about it. I mean, I didn't even know, I was just super thankful that I was still alive, and kind of in shock, I guess, if you will. I've always been a pretty healthy person, never spent any time in the hospital, and I literally cheated death that day. I did. So
you don't smoke or anything, right?
No, but I'm a runner, and and we chatted a little bit briefly about meditation, and since that event, because we went straight into COVID, I had not been able to get proper medical care for a year. So that put me in a condition called dilated cardiomyopathy from the damage I received from the heart attack, without any follow-up. So in my studies about near-death experiences, I learned a lot about meditation and started doing that. And because of that, I'm no longer on a transplant list, or I think because of that. They say it's, medical care or whatever, but I didn't really get any care. And by the grace of God, I am not on a transplant list right now. I mean, I'm still in the the heart failure condition, but I'm not on a transplant list. And my health has improved in the last year. I mean, tenfold because of, I meditate every day.
Right.
And before my NDE, never even thought about that. Never did anything of it. Never thought much about it. But I firmly believe now that, there's a lot to that in our spirit.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, you got the care. You definitely got the care. It's just from a different source.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's I love hearing stories like that because it just proves that we can cure ourselves. We can maybe not cure everything, but there's a lot that we can do on our own. Not to not I'm not saying anything negative about doctors and hospital care. By all means, my God, like we need it. But a lot of things we can take care of on our own, I think,
Yeah, I would
There's
agree with that.
there's books being written. I wish I could remember the title of this one book. I read it so many years ago, but it was basically a whole pile of case studies, something with love in the title. Anyways, case studies of people. I think mainly that they mainly had cancer, different cancers, and they all cured themselves one way or another. And I think the bottom line was mind over matter in this book in particular, and talking a lot
Mm-hmm.
about love. But there is all these real cases of people, like to give you an example, one guy literally pooped out a tumor, and had not a trace of cancer in him anymore, anywhere, And I remember him specifically. It's funny, I remember that one. But there were a few that were pretty spectacular in that book. I have to find out what it is so I can share the title with you. It was really inspiring, how many people cured themselves despite being told they had like whatever prognosis, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but they all beat it.
Yeah, no, I firmly believe it. And, like I mentioned, I've done a lot of reading on it since my NDE. And, I think a lot of these things, the power of our mind, we don't even know, the full power of that. And, there's no, we think we know, maybe from a medical standpoint, we know a lot, but from a spiritual standpoint, I don't know, and everybody believes what they believe, but I think we're all the same, whether, I don't care what your religion is or your nationality or any of that. We're all the same. We all have the same spirit source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Definitely. And I mean, for you in particular, and it reminds me of another fellow we interviewed, John, way back when, also had a cardiac arrest, Widowmaker, and shouldn't have survived either. It's crazy. But I think, you guys, like, you had obviously spiritual push here, something, out of the ordinary had to have, come to your rescue, right, and help you out, because otherwise it's, how do you explain it, right? You healing like that, especially without
Well,
any care.
and I like to think that was my spiritual awakening. Maybe that was my thing. I had to have this medical event to change my perception or my thinking or my way of thinking. I'm not sure, but it has changed the way I think about a lot of things and appreciate, a lot of things that I probably took for granted before.
Exactly.
So,
I think
maybe
it's a
that
lot
was,
of, it's one of those things, like, it's often a message of, slow down, wake up and slow down kind of thing.
well, and that's the way it was supposed to happen. It wasn't an accident. That was the way it was supposed to happen. Like I'd mentioned to you about, telling my son, oh, see that hospital over there? That's where I'm going to take myself when I have a heart attack. And literally, 2 years later, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy.
What a story.
And my wife, I didn't even want this house. I wanted another house. And had we got the other house, it was out on the edge of town. I would have never made it to the hospital. I would have been too far away. I would have died before I got there.
Yeah.
And she tells me, when we looked at this house, she kept coming back to it and say, no, that's the house. We got to buy that house. And I'm like, well, but the other one's a better deal. And she's like, I don't know. There's something about this. We got to have this house. And so we got this house. And, you know, yeah,
Well, you said it. We're all connected, and I think all circumstances are connected too, right? So there's no accidents, there's no coincidences. Things happen for a reason. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's
I
true,
always
right?
say life is lived forwards and understood backwards, because when I look at some of the events that happened in my life, at the time I might not have got it, but looking back, you go, yeah, I get that now. I know why that had to happen. But certainly having a heart attack wasn't a plan of my life, but I won't say that I'm thankful, because it's been quite a ride, but in a way I am thankful. I really am. And it's not an enlightenment that I don't think you can get. You can't buy it. You can't, maybe that's why a lot of people take drugs. Maybe they're trying to experience it, or, I don't know, but it's an experience that is beyond words, beyond any feelings that I could explain or draw or anything. And why me? I don't know why me. I mean, but yeah, I'm thankful.
You can be inspiring many, many others, so it's not just something that you strangely benefit from, but many, many, many others watching this can also benefit from as well. So,
well, I hope that's the case, because death is certainly nothing to be scared of. And, beyond that, who knows? I mean, I'm believing that it's something really beautiful. It can't be all there is. It can't be.
Well, that it's not.
Yeah.
You of all people.
Well, now I sometimes think and dream that, okay, so I died for a little bit and I came back. So I can, I sampled it, but what's beyond, what's totally beyond? And, I've had a lot of loved ones die in my life, and I used to, be pretty sad about that, but I don't know that that's something to be totally sad about anymore, because it was, especially like in the case of my mom, she was suffering, and, she's not suffering. I saw her. When people say, oh, well, you'll see him again. Well, that's true for me. I saw my mom. I mean, just as if she was standing right in front of me today. It was as real could be. So, I hope that that's really true, and I get to hang out with all the people that I, truly miss.
I like to believe that we're protected up there as we are down here, and that, yes, we'll see them again if we want to. And if we don't, we won't.
Yeah.
Kind of, the same as it works down here, or you'd like to hope it does anyways. But you know what I mean? That way obviously there's going to be times where you don't, there's some people are not going to want to see some others. And, and I think that's how it works. I think, a large majority of the way this whole thing works when we transition, it's like we project our heavens, and we have our own versions of our own heavens, and they probably do interconnect. I think we can call up energies probably like almost like a library. Remember when you used to pull out those long drawers and just pull out, okay, which soul are they calling for now? And oh, they're looking for John. Here you go. Because it's the only way it makes sense to me, because if there's reincarnation, which I strongly believe that there's enough proof anyways, then there's got to be tons and tons of experiences that a lot of us are going through. So which one are you going to see when you die? Well, I think
there has to be,
you can see any one of them.
Some explanation for it, because like I have a friend that I don't know what her title is, but she's pretty involved in like past life regression type therapy and whatnot, and she's very good at it. She's nationally accredited, and I hear some of her stuff, and I do think we get reincarnated, because there's certain things that your soul knows that there's no way it could know unless it came from somewhere else. Like when people say, oh, you're an old soul, well, yeah, that we probably all are to a point. It's just some of us acknowledge it, some of us don't. Some of us know how to get there, and some of us don't. And I will say that I'm by no means an expert in meditation, but in my journey of at least trying, you know, it. And by no means am I good. Some days I can do it, and some days I can't do it. Some days I can do it for an hour. Some days I'm lucky if I can get 5 minutes. But when I can really, really do it, that is the closest feeling that I can get to what I felt that day. And that's if I'm really out of my headspace, if that's the best way to describe it.
So how often are you meditating?
You know, I try to do it at least every morning when I first wake up. And, you know, I run a busy real estate brokerage, so sometimes that doesn't happen because, you know, by the time I'm awake, you know, the phone's already ringing. But I try to block out time for myself every morning. And the days that I can really get into it, you know, I just completely lose myself in the process. But, you know, it's not easy. It's hard. There's a lot of distractions.
Yeah, that's true.
Your own mind is a distraction.
Certainly is. Well, on that note, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. And maybe we'll have you back again. Maybe not for NDEs, but maybe for an STE. If you ever have.
Well, hey, you know, I'd love to be part of your channel for sure.
Wonderful.
You know, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Will do.
Honestly, this is the first time I ever had a conversation with somebody I didn't know about this, and felt comfortable about it.
Good. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, there's something about you that, you know, didn't make it emotional or, you know, weird.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, man. I'm glad you were comfortable. That's important.
So I just thank you for making it, you know, comfortable to talk about. It's the first time. All right.
God bless you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.